As always, is Cathy Cannon, aka Cannon's Fodder, whose birthday is this week. We're very excited. Happy birthday, Cathy! Turning the big 42 there. That's pretty exciting.
42. That is correct. I'm old. I'm 1,000. It's fine. It's fine.
Turning 21 again. Well, you look great for 42. You look great in general.
Well, it was funny today. Like I told the kids, I just mentioned it. It was like, my birthday's on Saturday. They're like, when were you born? 1958. I was like, fuck you.
What the fuck?
I was like, fuck you, bro. Fuck you. My mom was born in 1958. Little bitches there. I think they're fucking with me sometimes.
1958. Yeah.
Yeah. All I know is I better get some Starbucks cards. That's what I'm saying.
Cathy's quite the boomer. Well, anyway, happy birthday. We should do like a special thing for your birthday. I should send you a present or something. I'll DoorDash you some like Dunkin' Donuts or something like that.
Or not. I mean, I'm not going to turn down coffee, but like, we don't have to make a big deal of it. I've had a lot of birthdays. They're kind of anticlimactic at this point, you know?
Birthdays are good.
Yeah,
birthdays are good.
But I am going to see the Book of Mormon, and I'm so excited.
That's really exciting. You know, let me change up this order a little bit because I feel like it would be a good birthday discussion for you to talk about that Newsom DeSantis debate.
Oh man,
that happened. Did you watch that? Did you watch that whole thing?
I did, and man, oh man, was that an experience?
DeSantis, Newsom clearly just like destroyed DeSantis in that debate. It like wasn't even close. It wasn't even fair. Newsom came up. I think that was like sort of the first time that Newsom really has appeared on like a national stage. At least it's probably the first time a lot of like Republicans that don't live in California have watched Newsom, for an extended period of time. I mean, Newsom's a great public speaker. He's a great debater. He's a very charismatic person with everything that Ron Desantis is not. So you could tell the leadership differences. Newsom did a fantastic job defending California's record because Republicans wouldn't be anything if they weren't able to just shit all over California. Like biggest blue state in the country, reliably blue state, trending more blue, and yet tremendously successful state. Is it perfect without problems? Absolutely not. There's a lot of problems in California. It's a big fucking state. It's what happens when you put 40 million people together. You're going to have in a lot of combinations of big cities and rural areas and a lot of different people. You put them all together, you're going to have issues. But I think Newsom did a really great job spelling out California's successes and looking, presenting a vision, definitely presenting the future of the Democratic Party in a really good way. You can definitely see that the Democrats have such a good bench coming up for after post Biden era.
They I'll say one thing. There was definitely a contrast made. And
do you disagree? I thought that I thought that Newsom kicked his ass. I don't know. Of course, Fox News was saying it was a victory for DeSantis.
Well, I mean, that's their job to say that, right? Basically, the debate was Hannity and DeSantis versus Newsom.
Yep.
Okay, it was that. And here's what I'll say to give the devil his due here. DeSantis performed better in that debate than I've seen him perform in any debate, and that's telling.
Yeah. It was better. It was a much better debate than the Republican debates have been.
Yeah, but he still was an idiot. Like he brought a map of poop, like a poop map of San Francisco. Fucking whatever. It's fine. He can do what he wants.
By the way, there is like a poop map of Miami. Maybe I'll add it in the show here. But
I mean, you can probably find one anywhere.
Yeah, pretty sure every city has a poop map. But yeah,
one of my friends in college had a boyfriend who would like keep track of all the places he'd ever pooped in public. With rankings as to the best poop in public place. That's hard to say.
Oh, that's great. There's apps that track that shit for you.
Yeah, literally, pun intended,
right? I didn't even catch that one.
I hang out with teenagers all day, man. I'm gonna catch the poop jokes.
But it was Hannity and DeSantis against Newsom, and Newsom still won. And that's
I was like, he still couldn't pull it off even with the assists.
It was literally the two of them. Did you see that after that Newsom's campaign was saying that Hannity let DeSantis break a bunch of rules that they had established, like bringing the poop map with, like they weren't allowed to use or they said they weren't going to be allowed to bring visuals. Newsom had no visuals. DeSantis had a couple.
Yeah.
They said they wouldn't be putting up any multimedia. Hannity put up a shit ton of like, the entire debate was just Hannity being like, Governor Newsom, explain why Florida is such a better state than California.
Yeah, basically that was kind of the tone, and he did so. I like that he called out how a lot of the data that Hannity was putting up was kind of skewed or misleading. Like a little lesson on data analytics on that one, which was interesting. If you can tell very clearly that DeSantis didn't win, finger quote, win this debate by the fact, like the aftermath of that in terms of his Republican nomination campaign, which is slow bleeding out, like in its worst. Like there was a headline today somewhere, I want to say it was, or Bloomberg, right? Like DeSantis campaign in turmoil ahead of Republican primary, right? Like, so if this debate was meant to, and it was meant to kind of put him back as standard bearer on top, to kind of like push Nikki Haley down. Because remember, we said this months ago, like Nikki Haley's probably their best bet, but it's the Republican Party and they're not going to let a woman be their president, right? Just like they wouldn't have let, like Tim Scott wasn't actually going to win. Like it's like, you're not going to get the freaking Jordan Petersons of the world to vote for Nikki Haley. And I'm sorry to tell you, Republicans, that's a good chunk of your party base.
Well, she's not Trump enough.
She's too much a woman, right? Like the really
an Indian woman. I mean, there's also
a white passing. Don't think she doesn't play on that. And that's the point. Like she's gonna get it from every angle that Republicans hate to be attacked from, right? And the hardcore misogynistic like branch of that party, which has gotten increasingly large. I don't care how crazy you are. Like Carrie Lake, I don't think could get their votes, because at the end of the day, no woman should be in charge. Like they do in fact have that mindset. So
they're all just it's a race for vice president. I mean, Carrie Lake will never, Carrie Lake wants to be Trump's vice president.
I know she does, and Marjorie Taylor Greene does too. And the little cat fight that's coming on that one, don't think I'm not excited about it. Like there's a part of me that's just like pay-per-view, money to be made.
Yeah, they have a very not so secret rivalry for Trump's affection, which is very bizarre.
I just don't understand why all these people trip over themselves for Donald fucking Trump. He's been a joke since '87. What the fuck is happening?
I don't understand how Donald Trump got to be how these people think Trump is cool. But the interesting thing about that debate was it was such a stupid debate. There was no point to it. Now we know that it was basically designed. It was a PR move, basically for red states. It was a hit job on Governor Newsom. They were trying to make Newsom in California look bad, trying to sort of throw a monkey wrench into Newsom's political plans for 2028 if he's going to be the nominee in 2028. But other than that, there was no point to that debate. And it's weird to me that DeSantis went along with it. I guess I get that he agreed to do it when he was doing much, much better in the polls. And it kind of like, it looked like DeSantis might be the nominee there for a while. And then his campaign just completely collapsed. But it was, DeSantis had nothing to gain from that. And Newsom had nothing to lose. It's like you're only one person in that debate is actually running for president. So it's just kind of seems stupid. Not that DeSantis is a smart person.
Well, I mean, he does have delusions of grandeur, right? Which I think might be in part why he agreed to it, because I honestly think he thought he could like out talk Gavin Newsom, which is fucking hilarious. But my favorite part of the debate, right, was we do have one thing in common, Ron. Neither of us will be the nominee for our parties in 2024. I was like, oh shit. And you saw Ronnie's face, like you just saw like the blood drain from his face when he said that, because that's like the Reagan, I'm not going to use your youth and experience against you kind of quality.
Yeah, that was a good. Yeah, he had a lot of those. There were a lot of really good
some zingers on there. Yeah, so Newsom, he's got that riz, as the kids would say. I can see why people would find him arrogant. I could see why people don't like him. But if the contrast was the reasons you don't like Newsom versus the reasons you don't like DeSantis, that one is clear. Like if you have to date one of these guys, we know who you're dating.
Yeah. I mean, he just made DeSantis look like, everything from the voice, the personality, he just made DeSantis look like kind of a whiny jerk. And everything about that debate just screamed like only one of these dudes is an actual leader. And it's it's interesting. I was having conversations with the guys after, the Midas guys after, and it was like, I don't know, man. I think Newsom would put a hell of a fight, would bring a hell of a fight to Donald Trump. I think that would be. I think Trump would have a very, very hard time taking down someone like Gavin Newsom. Newsom has a tendency to like step in poop again, not again with that metaphor, but he has a tendency to make like stupid mistakes, like the French Laundry thing. Like he got caught going out to a really fancy restaurant in the middle of COVID when like there was all these like restrictions on going out to eat and stuff like that. He does have a tendency to like say really stupid things, really arrogant things. So he gets in his way a lot. But I don't know. I'm not a person that thinks that like Joe Biden shouldn't run in 2024. But if he for some reason at the last minute decides not to, I think that I do think that moving Newsom into that spot would not be a terrible thing. So.
Maybe. I just think that we know how tactless Donald Trump is, and Newsom's ex-wife is sleeping with Donnie's son, so I could see them going like just full scorched earth, like dirty campaigning, right? Like John Adams level dirty campaigning. Like
I was gonna say it would be the dirtiest like personal campaign since like Quincy Adams versus Andrew Jackson.
Like the topic would be
each other's wives and shit.
Basically, or like you have a weird shaped dick, like that would be the campaign all of a sudden, and nobody needs that. Like we don't like. I'm exhausted.
It's a debate on the virtues of golden showers.
I told
which end of the golden shower to be on.
Yeah, exactly. I told the joke in my class today because we were going through opinion polls, and I told everybody how I'm like convinced that the worst like branding decision the Trump campaign ever made in 2020 was calling Joe Biden Sleepy Joe, because after all that insanity, we all wanted a nap. I got one giggle from the kids. I got one probably sympathy giggle from the kids.
So just interesting stuff. Let's do a Gaza update real quick. Almost 20,000 now killed in Gaza. About half of that is kids. So just thousands and thousands of kids dead. It's a population of 20,000 dead in Gaza. It's a population of equivalent of about 2.4 million Americans. So it'd be like if somebody killed 2.4 million Americans. No end in sight. Brief ceasefire. We talked about last show. Brief, extended for a couple of days, and then somebody violated the ceasefire. I hate how no information coming out of this thing is reliable. I mean, I just don't know. I mean, Israel said that like somewhere Gaza or somewhere Hamas violated the ceasefire. There's no evidence of it. I don't trust Israel's reporting. I don't trust Hamas reporting. It's just a giant fog of war shit show over there. And it's really,
and I find it very convenient that finger quotes someone violated the ceasefire right around the time Netanyahu's trial started back up. Question mark, right? So not to be all conspiratorial, but like, come the fuck on.
I think that Netanyahu's plan is to wipe Gaza off the map. I think he wants to kill as many Palestinians in Gaza as possible. I think they are making it incredibly hard for the Gazan civilians to reach any kind of safety. They have these pathetically lame safe areas that like now they have to all go to the beach. Like there's one area that's like a sand dune area on the beach. They're trying to tell all the civilians, these Gaza civilians, and they're supposed to go to this like 1 kilometer long strip of beach. We're talking like millions of people with no plumbing, no structures, no shelter, anything. They've got this stupid grid map where they'll announce where they're about to attack on this grid map, so that everybody in that little grid has to get out. They don't know where to go. They don't know what area is safe. It's just a complete hellish, nightmarish situation. Netanyahu is 100% a war criminal at this point. This is getting completely out of hand. He has got to go. The government has got to get rid of that guy. He's a megalomaniac fascist who's just hell bent on killing Palestinians at this point. I don't think there's any other way to say that. They're making absolutely no effort to provide humanitarian aid to the civilians. They're killing tons and tons of children. They're just breaking all of the rules of war. It's incredibly disheartening.
Yeah, and there's I think like the Biden administration is reaching their like tolerance point, right?
I think so too. Yeah.
And like it's and I know like people are like, oh, Joe Biden's endorsing this. He's really fucking not. And if you understand like the complexities of this, we all know he's not, right? And it's going to be clear. But like, you have to be willing to tolerate a little bit when you're dealing, because you can't just tell people what to do, right? You either want us to police the world or you don't. You have to pick a team. And if we're not, then we have to diplomatically like convince people, right?
Yeah.
Which means that you do the whole like in public, I'm on your side, behind closed doors, I'm going to bully you a little bit. But they're starting to flex their muscles out loud too, right? Like I saw a couple things happen today. I saw an article about like how Anthony Blinken, that's his name. I was like trying to find his name in my head and couldn't find it. But they are banning Israeli settlers from the West Bank from getting visas coming into America in response to a litany of attacks by West Bank settlers against Palestinians. 314 attacks that have resulted in at least 8 people being killed, along with like multiple things being destroyed, like property damage.
Since the war started?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like, so Israelis in the occupied territory of the West Bank, so not even Gaza, the other like Palestinian territory that the Israelis are, you know, kind of illegally stealing slowly, but that's fine, right? But now kind of the civilian aggression that comes. So like think post 9/11, how everyone was harassing Muslim people here. Well, now Israelis are harassing and attacking Palestinians in the occupied territory of the West Bank. And I'm pretty sure that was the breaking point for Biden. Like, you know, we're willing to understand that, you know, wartime, blah, 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 blah. But this fucking bullshit is just fucking bullshit straight up, right? So the US is banning visas for Israeli settlers from the West Bank, and I feel like this is putting pressure on Israel to do what you said, to deal with Netanyahu, right?
Yeah.
Because
again,
like,
I think he's the problem here.
No, he's 100% the problem. Like I tried explaining this to somebody earlier. I was like, look, for you say free Palestine, and yay, I'm all for that. But what you have to understand is that for Palestine to be, quote, free, both Netanyahu and Hamas need to be dealt with, because Hamas isn't going to allow them to live freely. And Israel clearly is not going to allow, like both of these, like this is an issue where both of these things need to be dealt with. And because, you know, America got a little bit of a reputation for regime change there, and we're trying to rebrand, I feel like that's why they're trying to slow roll this out. But in reading the article, there was like a little part where the Palestinian Authority was involved in talking with like Israeli officials in response to like this visa thing. And that kind of clued into my head, right? Because remember how we were saying that for a two-state solution to work, you need to like re-legitimize the Palestinian Authority and kind of pull support away from Hamas. So I feel like that's kind of what this is. Like if we know Bibi's fraud trial has started up, his popularity in his country is declining, support for his war is declining in Israel. Like that's the domestic politics end of it. So now the US is flexing their muscle where they can, right? We're treaty bound to like militaristically defend them, right? We have to do that. But this is the way that we can kind of like send our message to them, right? Like, I understand we have to help you based on this treaty, but we don't have to let your people into our country, and that's going to cause you some problems, right?
Yeah. You can't just do you can't just do stuff like this. You can't just annihilate wipe a people off the face of the earth and continue to expect other nations to, you know, not consider you a war criminal state. Like this is this has real like Hunger Games District 12 kind of vibe to it. I feel like one day we're just going to wake up and all the Gazans are just going to be gone. I mean,
well, let's not tempt fate on that.
There's just not that many people, you know, there's just not that many people there. It's really upsetting. It's really disheartening. They're pulling, you know, I think, and I think to your point, I think it's like they're making it harder and harder for Biden and their allies to defend them. And Biden is a sensible guy. Biden is a compassionate guy, and Biden doesn't like Bibi Netanyahu to begin with. I don't know. I think his patience is going to kind of run out on this thing, because it's not a war of, again, we said this before, it's a war of revenge. It's not a war of efficacy. This war's not making Israeli people safer. It's not making Jewish people safer. Quite the opposite. It's emboldening, you know, anti-Israeli, anti-American forces all over the world are just being emboldened by this, and recruitment is going up for Hamas. You know, this is just it's not a good situation.
And I don't know if you've seen, and I'm pretty sure it's still an unconfirmed thing, but there's like chatter about whether or not Netanyahu had military intelligence on the attack before October 7th or not. Like they claim it was a failure of Israeli intelligence, but it's coming out that it might not have been. And to be fair, like that comes out all the time. Like there was the same thing about 9/11. Like they knew about the attack, they let it happen. FDR, did he know about the attack and let it happen? Right? Like that kind of chatter always shows up around these events. But the reason I think it's getting some attention is because there was like $800 million in stock trades from the Israeli bank in the days leading up to the October 7th attack. So that makes it suspicious. So I'm not going to go out and say outright, like, while things are still being investigated, I don't want to I don't want to misreport or anything here, but there have been accusations that perhaps Netanyahu did know about the attack, in which case then there's the real question. Did he in fact, one, profit off of it by short selling a bunch of fucking stock, which is literally why you're on trial, my dude, but okay. Or one of the reasons. I think the rest of it is bribery, but whatever. But then did you willingly allow your citizens to be slaughtered so you had justification for annihilating Gaza, which we know you've wanted to do for 20 years, right?
The only thing totally. Yeah.
So if that ends up being a confirmed report, like that's going to blow this shit out of the fucking water.
I think what's confirmed is that it is confirmed that Israeli intelligence had hard intelligence that.
Oh, it did confirm it? When would that happen?
Well, they would confirm that Israeli intelligence had information that Hamas was planning something big. I don't know if they had the exact date, but they basically had the information that a massive Hamas attack was coming. Somebody in the upper echelons of Israeli intelligence dismissed it and said it was aspirational. I think was the quote that the guy used. Said that they didn't believe the intelligence reports because somebody said that it would be too aspirational for Hamas to pull off an attack like this. I've also heard that the CIA had some chatter about it coming that they passed on to the Israelis. So that much is confirmed, that it was basically an intelligence failure. Now, I like to your point, I don't know that there's any proof whatsoever that Netanyahu knew and didn't intentionally let it happen. But
which is what it's turned into on TikTok. Let's be real.
Of course. Well, you have to be suspicious of people like Netanyahu. You have to be suspicious of the fact that the entire southern half of that country was completely unguarded by the Israeli Defense Forces. Usually that whole border is patrolled by tanks and guard towers and troops and everything. It was completely undefended. Hamas was able to just walk right in. It is completely suspicious. And man, if it comes out, that's going to be
that'll be bad. So it's in a similar lane to W had a report on his desk that said Bin Laden's planning an attack. I'm going to Crawford.
At this point, it's almost identical to that situation. The report that said Bin Laden determined to attack within the United States. It gave a list of targets and stuff. So,
truthfully, the parallels to that are kind of freaking terrifying, if you will, because just like they are using this as their justification for going into Gaza, we know George W. was itching to go to Iraq before he even took office, right? So
I'm not a 9/11 truther. I never believed that Bush planned it or anything. But I do think they absolutely took advantage of it for sure.
No, of course they took advantage of it. But I mean, nobody plans 9/11 except the hijackers. But it's definitely Reagan's fault because it's a consequence of his military policies in that region literally coming back to bite us.
Yeah. It's pretty.
And that's why the 9/11 truthers make me so mad, right? Because the conspiracy hides the truth, and the truth is fucking worse than the conspiracy.
Yeah,
the truth is that we are the evil empire and need to address that.
The conspiracy totally misses the point, gives people a pass. You know what I mean? You don't need to have a conspiracy to show that something went really, really horribly wrong there.
Yep. I'm like, no, it's worse. It's 40 years of corruption, and it's what?
Yeah.
It's not one former cocaine addict idiot that planned an attack so we could avenge his daddy in the wrong country. No, that's just too.
I don't even know if Netanyahu. I just think Netanyahu's taken, has been wanting to do this for years, and he's taking advantage of the situation.
That's exactly it. He hates
a couple of other stories. So George Santos expelled from Congress.
I love that. By the way.
He's going on to he's doing Cameo now. He's done some Cameo. He did a Cameo. I guess John Fetterman paid for him to do a cameo to Bob Menendez, which is just absolutely hysterical. I cannot wait to see what version of George Santos we get now, because the George Santos that was in Congress was a character. Like, that's not really who he is. So, are we going to see the real George Santos now? Is he going to is he going to put on another character? Is he going to try and stick with his MAGA thing? I don't know, but I can't wait for him to just sort of, spill the tea on all the people, of all the members of Congress, like he said.
Really what I'm hoping, like the way Madison Cawthorn was like low key trying to throw everyone under the bus when he left Congress. Yeah. He didn't get expelled either. He just got voted out. But like George Santos, he's a fickle bitch, right? And you can tell. And I just want to take him to brunch and be like, girl,
yeah,
what do you got? What do you got? That's what I want to know.
Well, he's also probably going to jail. He's got 23 felonies, but it's really funny.
There's also that. Yeah, there's also that.
There's over 300 votes to expel Santos from Congress, over 100 Republicans voting to send him out. Last time this happened was 21 years ago in 2002 with Congressman James Traficant, who was like just a mobster, basically. A lot of bribery and tax evasion.
That was 2002. God, that was a long time ago.
Yeah. Doesn't seem like it was that long ago.
I know. That's what I'm saying, man. Like, when did we get old? Or me, at least.
2/3 vote needed to expel a member from Congress. George Santos is gone. He wasn't going to run again anyway. And he'll probably end up in jail. But for the brief period, the interlude here between his expulsion and his trials, I think we're going to get a side of George Santos that we haven't seen before. So that's pretty exciting.
Here's hoping. Here's hoping.
Liz Cheney says we're sleepwalking into a dictatorship. I don't know that we're sleepwalking into it. I just think it's kind of building and coming. If Trump wins the election. Liz Cheney sounding alarms. There's been a lot of like democracy talk this week because of this Cheney interview where she says this, basically saying that the members of Congress that we have right now, like Speaker Johnson and Josh Hawley and people like that, just say we don't have the guardrails in Congress anymore, or they're just not strong enough if Trump decides that he's not going to leave office, or if he wants to basically make himself a dictator, that we do not have the congressional guardrails in place sufficiently to stop him from doing that. So she's basically just sounding the alarm on that. I think we've been saying that for years, Cathy. I think we always knew that Trump was a big threat to our democratic experiment.
Yeah, Democrats have. To me, she's more calling out her own party on that one.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because like the way she's saying it is like, we are not, like, it sounds like she's talking about America at large, but we know that there are people who are aware, who are working, who are fighting, and quite a lot, and quite.
So she's saying the Republican parties.
But I think that's what she's doing, because that's kind of been her thing. Like the whole January 6th committee, she's called them to the carpet on it a bunch of times. Dick Cheney came out the other day and said something like, when fucking Darth Vader shows up. But I think he was saying something about, actually it was a funny line. Hold on, what was it? I can find it. I've been a Republican longer than you've been spray tanning. Donald Trump, which I'm going to give it to him. His 20-year-old heart is sassy, but he's still a war criminal, so fuck him. But,
speaking of war criminals, yeah.
I know. But
when someone's so bad, they make you like Dick Cheney.
I'm not going to go so far as to say I like Dick Cheney. You can, right? But I'm giving him.
I like his sass. I like how he's handled Trump for sure.
Yeah, I'll give him one polite giggle at a joke, like the kids do for me when they can tell I'm really trying.
Liz Cheney sounding the alarms about that. It's not exactly like a secret. They've released the 2025 project where they want to give Trump
fucking terrifying,
like unprecedented executive authority. They want to cancel freedom of the press. They want to, they do talk about like concentration camps and deportation. Kash Patel was on Steve Bannon today talking about how they have a list of who they're calling like conspirators in politics and media that they're going to quote unquote come after. So it's it's real. It's real. And I don't think that Trump will win the election. He's never won the popular vote. Biden has already beat him in an election. I don't think he's gained enough good ground to potentially win an election outright. What I do worry about is them just fucking with the election. He's already talking about sending his people out to like check on. He's priming his people for violence on election day. They're talking about going to polling places in these like cities, these like black areas of cities. He's talking about going to like Pittsburgh and Detroit and Philadelphia, having his people watch the polling and watch what's going to happen. He's priming his people for violence. So what I'm worried about is I'm worried about them fucking with the election more so than him just like winning, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we were worried about that in 2020 as well, truthfully. But I feel like there's a lot of time between now and the election. Like, I know it's within a year, so we're all kind of starting to, get in campaign mode. But there's 91 felony charges hanging in the air here that we can't really ignore. Yeah, and like, we all know he's probably going to win the nomination, but the question remains, does he make it to election day, right?
Yeah, or if he's just so compromised by his trials and exhausted that he just kind of keels over.
Well, I mean, that I wasn't going there, but I was just like, at a certain point, like, even if he's up in the delegate count, by the time they get to, like, let's say he's up in the delegate count, which he will be, right? And then they get to like the week before the convention and he's convicted of freaking election fraud in Georgia, wherein only Brian Kemp could pardon him and won't, because that guarantees Georgia goes blue at that point, like forever. Plus, I don't think he's a big fan, right? So, like, they could, and I keep saying this, like, this is the Republican Party's 1968, where I honestly can see them having a brokered convention because of the weird rabid support behind Donald Trump in terms of voters, but the very clear recognition among party establishment that he's a fucking death deal for the party. Like, they're not going to win this because he gets the nomination. And I know right now we're looking at the polls and you see like, oh, but people are saying they're going to vote for Trump. No, they're not. They're petulantly saying I'm going to vote for Donald Trump to convey that they're annoyed right now in this moment. And that's their other option. When it comes
some of that stuff is so dubious, those polls, though.
Well, yeah, because when it comes down to, because I was teaching this with the kids today, I'm like, we were talking about like the different biases that can happen in polls. Like, I don't know, you probably know the Bradley effect. You're from California, right? But also the social bias thing, right? Like, people will say one thing and do another thing, right? Like, sure, I'll vote for a black mayor. You get in the booth and you don't.
Yeah.
Sure, I'm ready for a woman president. You get in the booth and you're not. Yeah, I'll vote for Donald Trump. Fuck Joe Biden. Really? You're in the booth now. Nobody's looking. Right? Nobody's looking. You can pretend you didn't, right? You can out loud say, like, I'm not doing this because I think this, but deep down know that you kind of have to, right? But you can lie about who you vote for. You can tell us you voted for Harambe all you want, but,
none of that to say that, like, we should get complacent or anything. I'm not like, I'm not saying that. We still got to show up and vote and campaign and do the work, put the work in. It's not a foregone. It's going to be close. Like, it's going to be very, very, like, way too close for comfort.
But I don't know if you've noticed, but Donald Trump is fucking saying shit out loud. Like, he used to just kind of allude to it and like wink and a nod, but he's straight up just like, I'm going to evoke the Insurrection Act. I'm going to shut down the media. Like, and like I said, right, only his people are hearing it right now, and his people like him, so of course they like it. People who are saying, oh, I'll vote for Trump over Biden aren't on Truth Social. They aren't watching him every day. But the campaign is starting, right? He's gonna have to start showing up again. And when more people start seeing just how unhinged he's become, I'm going to have a little bit more faith in people a little bit.
The one bright part of that New York Times Siena poll was that there was a sizable majority of people saying that they would vote for Trump, where he loses that vote. He loses that support if he's like in jail or getting too much the court cases. There's a sizable chunk of that Trump vote in that poll where his support goes soft. Due to his legal troubles. So that is something. And I do think you're right. Like, I think when it really starts to get into the thick of it next year, when he's in trial after trial after trial and actual trials and these just Georgia trials televised, you're going to hear the witnesses. You're going to see them. You're going to hear exactly what these guys did in Georgia. It's just not going to bode well. And it's not going to, it's already hitting him psychologically, mentally. He's declining. So I think as it gets more and more intense, he's gonna crack up a little bit.
Yeah, and you saw it, like, truthfully, like, history kind of proves this, right? Because Nixon had pretty good numbers, like, approval rating, whatever, going into the Watergate scandal, and a lot of people stood behind him for a while, like, as Woodward and Bernstein were putting out articles. It took a lot to break it. It was the hearings that broke it. It was
Hmm.
putting the Watergate hearings on TV, and those numbers tanked. It was
Right.
soon as people could see it, and they'll see
Yeah.
it. They'll see it.
And you know, to Liz Cheney's point about the congressional sort of backstop, we had Mike Johnson today, actually, Secretary or Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, talking about releasing more of the unseen January 6th footage, but blurring the images so you can't see these people's faces. And we were, you know, Ron Filipkowski today was like, that is obstruction of justice. Like,
Only a
you can't
little,
just do
Troy.
that.
Only a little.
Like, okay, so if any one of us, like, if you had cell phone footage of somebody robbing a Dunkin's, robbing a Dunkin' Donuts,
Mhm.
and you either didn't turn that over to the police, or you doctored that or altered that, you know, that footage before you turned it over, you would be charged with obstruction of justice. That's exactly what Mike Johnson is doing. And so now we have the Speaker of the House, the Republican Speaker of the House, talking about protecting insurrectionists by blurring their faces. He's like literally talking about protecting them from being prosecuted by the DOJ. Like, that's not your role, buddy. Like,
Also, like,
you
doesn't
just,
the DOJ have this footage already?
yeah, yeah,
So, like,
yeah.
what are you honestly protecting? You're protecting their personal reputations because you know who might show up on there,
Right.
right? Some of them
Exactly.
gave you
They
money and they
know there's going to be people showing up on camera that, you know, criminal acts of people show up on
asked.
camera that we haven't seen before that they're trying to protect.
Mhm.
So,
And, like, you're gonna, like, them releasing those tapes is gonna backfire so bad, and I honestly think it's because, like, how brainwashed are Republicans in Congress? I think some of them truly believe releasing those tapes will prove the fact that it wasn't the Trump voter. Like, honestly,
yeah.
it's gonna backfire on them bad. Like, they're
Well,
gonna crop it and cut it to show, like, the moments where people are just meandering around to be like, "See, it's mostly peaceful." But,
we
like
we watched it live.
like,
Like, it's
we
just so
watched
dumb.
it happen
But
because
they also have nothing but contempt for their people. Like,
yeah.
there's like hundreds of thousands of hours of footage. He's releasing about like 0.02% of it. And it's
Mhm.
and they want to blur the faces, and they're like, you know, so it's going to take years. I mean, it's going to the amount of footage they have to go through to edit, and it's going to take a long time to get through all
Which means
this
they're not
footage.
really going to release
Which
it,
means he's
right?
not really going to do it because he's going to run out
Yeah.
of time. He's going to be out of Congress before they before they're done
Well,
like
what it
doctoring
is,
this
and
footage.
this is the point, like, this is where I think that it's gonna, like, this is the hill they will, in fact, die on because this is gonna take them out. If they release the footage, they're fucked because they either have to, you know, cherry pick the footage they're willing to release and then answer for why they cherry picked the footage, right? Or they have to release all of it and then people will see it, or they do this. But this is even more suspicious because they keep saying how they're like, oh, this is all about transparency. Really? Like, your blurred vision or videos are about transparency, right? They're going to lose those people that,
Hmm.
like, don't necessarily support them, but we're willing to play along that perhaps the DOJ is overreaching, going after, like, you know, just the random people that showed up and got caught up in the thing, right? Go after the people that planned it, fine. But, you know, those people, you know what I mean? They're going to lose those people on this.
Hmm.
Because if you're going out of your way to blur the faces of those people, did they just get caught up in it? And it stops being like a talking point that they can lean on, you know?
He's such an idiot. He basically admits to obstruction. He said his
Mhm.
quote was literally something like, you
Oh, I
know,
have
we
it. You
would
want me
have,
to read it?
yeah, read it, yeah.
Quote, we have to blur some of the faces of people who participated in the events of that day because we don't want them to be retaliated against and to be charged by the DOJ.
He's literally saying, like, we have footage of people committing a crime. We don't want them to be charged. Like,
Yeah.
it's not how that
Which
works, buddy.
Which basically is them admitting the fact that you have people committing a crime, which means you admit it was a crime, which means it
Right.
couldn't have been a peaceful protest, which means it was in fact an insurrection. And if they were Democrats, you wouldn't care about blurring their faces. So who really did it, Mikey?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
they blew it
it
all
was
in
a
one
peaceful
quote.
protest, or, you know, like a tourist trip or something,
Yeah.
like they say. They wouldn't need to blur
If it
the
was, you wouldn't need to blur the faces of peaceful protesters, nor would you be worried about them being retaliated against or charged with criminal actions. If it was so peaceful, they just blew up their entire game.
Well,
right? Like,
30,000 foot, once again, you have Donald Trump like basically threatening a dictatorship in the United States.
yeah.
His sycophants in Congress are now working for him. And, we had an insurrection on our Capitol, an attempt to violently overthrow our government. And now members of Congress, basically at the bidding of Donald Trump, are using their congressional authority to protect the insurrectionists. So it's like, it's a very, this is, this is 5 alarm. This is really bad. Really
Oh
bad
yeah,
stuff.
like James Madison's losing his fucking mind. This is the thing that they put so much painstaking thought into creating a government that could endlessly check its own authority, right? But the one thing that they didn't really account for is that Congress would totally simp a president.
Yeah.
And that's where we are.
Yeah.
And
We'll
that's
see
the
how
worst
it
part
goes.
about it. They keep talking about how they're, macho men and all of this. I'm sorry, macho men don't bootlick.
Yeah. It's pretty bad. There's
no real man would be sucking at the teat of Donald Trump.
there's also like weird, this whole like abandoned Biden movement is kind of weird and dubious. There's a lot of like just mind fuck psyop type stuff happening. You have these Muslim groups that are encouraging, like trying to encourage Muslim voters to not support Biden over the Gaza war. It's just like there was like a hashtag abandoned Biden movement. Some of the leaders of that organization have been noted Trump supporters for years. It's just really dubious support, like trying to pretend like they were Biden voters, they were Democrats. They're not. They're Trump supporters. So you have these like psyop operations where they're trying to convince Muslims in like Michigan and Arizona, which are obviously two key swing states, to not vote, and they're promising that they're going to get like tens of thousands of Muslims to refrain from voting for Biden, flip the election. Even if that was really what's going on, it's total bullshit. But even if that is what these people were trying to do, it's pretty funny that they think that. And this was like on the day that Trump promised to reinstitute his Muslim ban, so it's pretty funny that they think they're going to get a better deal from Donald Trump than they would.
Well, and that's kind of what I'm saying is like at the end of the day, they know who is more scary, who is more dangerous for them. But I also saw a story that I can't remember where, and I usually like to say where I see my stories, but there's concerns of Russian interference in the election again, because over on Elon's site, there was like a shitload of new accounts that started out all pushing the Genocide Joe thing. Right. Remember how it showed up out of nowhere? It's the latest in Russian propaganda, guys.
Sure it is.
Right? Like the 2020 version of like election interference in America is that, right? Because they can do it. And we know the alliance, right? Russia, Iran, Hamas, right? Because we know it's a direct link there. So
they're at it again.
They're at it again, right? But that's that's just that's going to be just fun to unpack and deal with.
I just don't know that we're ready for this. Like Americans are just not ready for this amount of like psychological warfare and psyops. You know what I mean? It's just
perhaps. But one thing I will say is like I know we always keep coming back to it, and like we're worried about the kids being mad at Joe Biden. But one thing that is interesting about them is they're a little bit more savvy at sussing out like the bullshit.
Sussing out the sus.
Yeah, if you will. And at least when it comes to AI, because we were all concerned about like them using AI, blah, 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 blah. Like that's not going to get the kids. It'll get like the millennials, it'll get the Gen Xers, it'll get the boomers, but the kids are really good at it. Like they're the ones that tell me like how you can figure out it's AI versus real thing. They give me all the clues. Apparently it's the hands, right? Hands are really hard for AI to match. So you have to like look at the hands in a picture. And if the hands look weird, then it's probably AI. And from there, your eye starts catching everything. They're so good at it, man. Like they're so good. I keep telling them, I'm like, go fucking work for the fucking FBI, please. Like the CIA, like go do the thing, please.
Speaking of California, so California is now introducing curriculum for in high school to start tracking false information, how to spot false information online is going to be part of like.
That's really good. Like I have a lesson that I do. It's like my media literacy where we like
media literacy.
Like we pull stories. I show them this. Like we'll pull a story right from a central kind of reporting left and a right, and we'll read the headlines and read the articles. And what we find is that it's the headlines that are the most misleading and the first paragraph of the article. Like once you get past the first paragraph of the article, it starts actually getting pretty straightforward in most places, except like the Looney Tunes, like Blaze.com, fucking Alex Jones land. Like those are lost causes, right? But like
InfoWars.
Once you get past like the sensational headline and the hook at the beginning that kind of gets you like, this is the framing we want you to have, If you start reading from after that, you get the details. They're pretty straightforward way, but what we find is that like right wing will frame it in the first paragraph in one way, left wing will frame it in another way, and the middle people are just boring from the gate, right? 5.2% economic growth in the third quarter, like it's just straight up.
Speaking of AI and ChatGPT, did you know? I just found this out today. Did you know? The company that made ChatGPT, OpenAI. Did you know that Elon Musk is on their board? That Elon Musk is involved in that?
I think
that thing?
I did know that. I don't know if I knew like specifically how, but I do know he was like.
I learned two things about ChatGPT today. The first was that Elon Musk is on the board. The second is that it's a free nonprofit, and I just think that is so like there's such a like undercurrent of villainy there. Like they unleashed this AI thing on the entire fucking world, and they put it in terms of like, oh look, it's a benevolent nonprofit. We're doing this for the betterment of humanity. And I'm kind of like, something like that should probably have a paywall. That should probably be a subscription service. Not everything is good just because it's a nonprofit. It's like, oh, look, my nonprofit just made cancer airborne and contagious. Like, you're welcome.
Yeah,
it's not everything is good just because it comes out of a nonprofit. And the fact that Elon Musk is on the board, it just seems so like super villainy. Like they've unleashed this, AI on the world that anyone can use now because it's free.
Here's all I know. Like here's the thing I know about ChatGPT, right? I know that it wrote a lot of papers on Huck Finn for my kids this week. They just tell me this shit, dude. Like I tell them all the time, I'm like, please don't share the strategies you have to cheat in your other classes. I'm like honor bound by like professional courtesy to inform them. So please don't say these things to me.
Yeah.
But and you realize the kids still read Huck Finn. Doesn't that seem a little like
yeah.
Like there are other books that could teach those themes.
The other dubious sort of Trump endorsement was this guy, Mark Fisher, who Fox was calling a co-founder of Black Lives Matter. Did you see this? Did you see the information?
I didn't actually. I saw you put that in the outline, and I was like looking for it too, and couldn't find it.
So Mark Fisher. And then Trump picked up on it too, and was saying that he was getting BLM support. So this guy did an interview on some podcast that went viral, basically, suggesting that he's a co-founder of BLM, and he was endorsing Trump, and he was saying that he's following all the MAGA lines for trying to get black people to abandon the Democratic Party, saying the Democratic Party is the party of slavery. They haven't done anything for black people. They're the actual racists. All this stuff.
Civil Rights Act voting.
So he was saying, so he's making all these claims on this podcast. It went viral. He goes on Fox News and basically echoes the claims. So Fox is able to present this as they called him a co-founder of BLM. What he was a somewhat of an important person in the Rhode Island chapter of BLM Rhode Island. He was listed as one of their directors on their articles of incorporation in around 2020. The current director of BLM Rhode Island said he was more of in an advisory role, but he was fired from BLM Rhode Island. He was kicked out. He started his own organization called BLM Inc., which is basically, it's not like a traditional BLM organization. It's like a nonprofit that focuses on black employment. But this guy has basically been a Trump supporter for years. He was kicked out of BLM Rhode Island, was not a co-founder. So basically they just found some random BLM guy that has been a Trump supporter for years, called him a co-founder, quote unquote, co-founder of BLM. And they're just pushing this narrative now. They're using them, and they salivate over stuff like that. And Trump was even echoing these claims. So it's all just psyop bullshit.
It's also just kind of sad. Are your numbers so bad that now you have to try and go get the BLM people? I thought they were so bad. I thought
that's the other aspect of this.
They were so terrible. Why would you want an endorsement from people you call terrorists, Donnie? Come on.
That's the other side of this is you just 2 minutes ago, you said that BLM was a terrorist organization. So you'd think
they endorsed it. Yay.
Yeah. You think you wouldn't want their endorsement. But.
Yeah. whatever. He doesn't, either he thinks his supporters are that stupid or they are, in fact.
They are that
I don't even know anymore.
You and I should just start an organization called MAGA Inc. And then we can go on MSNBC and say that we were Trump supporters.
I would make
and now we're
so much crooked money doing that because I so good at speaking Republican, right?
I had a friend who tried to infiltrate the local. can't remember if I told you this or not. I had a friend who tried to like infiltrate the local Republican club by pretending to be a Republican, and they spotted him in like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
He was just basically trying to fuck their shit up.
Yeah, I know how to write like a Republican. I'm pretty sure like my face would tell on me really fast. So, like,
You just have like stink eye the entire
I
time.
have no poker face at all. It's why I always lose at Monopoly.
I went to a Carrie Lake rally here in Tucson, and I basically was like in character the whole time. I was applauding. I realized that I probably like for the first half of the speech, I probably had like angry face on. So I realized like, I didn't want to get spotted by these people. So I basically started to play the character, and I was applauding at everything she said. And afterwards I went up and shook her hand and all this stuff. And I was like, thanked her. She like gave me a hug. She was like, thanks for coming. I'm like, oh, that's great.
Did you take a shower as soon as you got home?
I did. Yeah. She's good at retail politics, man. I gotta say, she's a good like handshaker, hugger. She's one of these politicians that'll like lean in close and like put her hand on your shoulder and stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember I had a professor in college who I'm trying to think. I want to say it was Jerry Falwell's funeral. When did Jerry Falwell die?
Oh Jesus, I don't know. Long time ago. Right?
But anyway, like this, like my yeah, something like that, maybe. So no, it must have been earlier than that. I don't know. It was some freaking like crazy Republican guy had died, right? And my professor had been working as a law clerk for Hugo Black, I think, at the time. So this was a long time ago then. So it was no, it wasn't. It was later. Whatever. The story is that he ends up at this funeral filled with fucking Republicans, right? And he was definitely not a Republican. This guy, he was definitely not. And he said that he like was sitting there and he shook some guy's hand in like the receiving line or whatever. And he's like, it took all my willpower not to just wipe it on my pants and go, right? And then he's like, and I had the darkest thought sitting at this funeral. I looked around and I was like, one strategically placed bomb and I could solve a lot of America's problem. And I was like, I'm not going to say the professor's name. I was like, Dr. So-and-so, you can't say things like that in a post 9/11 world.
Yeah, you really shouldn't. But
he's like, well, I thought it in a pre 9/11 world and we had a good laugh.
Oh, Jesus. One last story here. We're just about out of time, but it's, in a post-Roe world, we had the New Hampshire Republican Party introduce a bill in the state legislature for a 15-day abortion ban, not 15-week, 15-day abortion ban.
That is ridiculous.
Which is obviously not a serious piece of legislation, but that is hilarious to me. I don't really want to get into the biology of it too much there, Cathy, but do you think you would know you were pregnant within like 2 weeks? I mean, that's a little crazy. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not exactly an authority on this subject, having no children and all, but like, no, I'm pretty sure it's like I've had friends that were like straight up nearly 12 weeks before they were like, when did I have my last period? Because when you're an adult, you don't know what day it is 80% of the time. So.
Yeah, it's at-home pregnancy tests only become like they're not even effective until like 10 days or something like that. But
again, not an authority on this.
Just a serious extremist position. And the weirdest thing is, like, in a post-Roe world, they could have just outright banned it. I mean, I don't know why are they doing this? Like, maybe it's in the state constitution or something to protect abortion. I don't know. But why would they do this like 15-day thing? Like, why don't they just outright ban it? I mean, a 15-day limit is an effective ban anyway. They are allowed to just ban it now in a post-Roe world.
I think because that way they can say it's not a complete ban. That's the only reason I can think of.
Again, you just hate your constituents. You just think people are stupid if you think that's like,
But I'm telling you, and this is the thing, like, this is why the things that kind of give me hope at the end of the day are fucking shit like that. Like, at the end of the day, no matter how mad you are at Joe Biden, what happens if he loses? Right? That's all I want to know, right? As mad as you are at him, what happens if he loses?
Let's not give up on these other rights that we have.
I am fine with 2024 becoming negative partisanship, right? I'm fine if the only way that we can get through this is we are so against Republicans, I'll vote for a potato. Potato Biden for press. That's all I got, right? Like, none of us are super thrilled, right? But
once again, it's the choice between a candidate that you have moderate policy disagreements with, and a candidate that wants to turn women into slaves and eradicate LGBTQ. So the both sidesism has got to stop. It's nonsense at this point. Biden is not perfect. You're not going to love everything that Biden does. You have to compare Biden to the alternative and what Trump wants to bring to this country. And I tell you, this is not the 1990s. This is not Clinton Dole.
Nope.
This is not like, it doesn't really matter who the president is. This is
It
it's go
matters
time
right now. Yep. It's pretty bad. And like what I can say, I feel like I lost my train of thought there for a hot second. I had a good point. No. Meh, it's gone. It's gone. It's gone. Out of my brain. It's gone.
So yeah, just crazy. 15 days. 15 days.
Yeah.
Because you're supposed to know that you're pregnant and schedule an abortion like instantly, like the second, Yeah, I won't be gross, but the second it finishes.
Thanks, Troy. Appreciate that.
You gotta be calling the doctor there. So we are just about out of time. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Cathy, again for a great conversation. Hey, now would be a good time to subscribe on Patreon if you haven't already. We are revamping our deep dive series again. It's going to be almost exclusively for Patreon. There will be some deep dive content on the non-subscriber channel as well. But head on over to patreon.com, patreon.com/justbuylesscoffee. You can subscribe for as little as $5 a month. Get access to what is going to be a lot more behind the scenes content, a lot of deep dive content. Cathy and I are going to be reviving our deep dive series that people really enjoyed, I think, for a while. We were doing that on Thursdays. We will have post-show deep dives that will be only available for Patreon subscribers. So now is a good time if you want to get a little bit more of our content that the general public doesn't get to see, head on over to Patreon and subscribe. As always, if you're listening to the audio only versions, make sure you're clicking that download button. Downloads are how we're ranked with other news and political podcasts. It's free. You can really help us out. Just go ahead and download that episode, get our download numbers up. If you want to see the video content, the non-Patreon video content, the regular show content on video, if you want to see our faces, head on over to YouTube. We have a channel on YouTube, Just Buy Less Coffee. You can see their video recordings of the episode. Thanks, Cathy, so much for a good conversation. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. And we will see everybody next time.